as you think about, early stage founders and they're thinking about what do I need to actually go raise that money? Every single box is important in that checkbox. You have to have all of the ingredients in order to move forward. And I thought I could just skirt through it with we've got these great customers and we'll figure it out. And I didn't have that box checked. And so then once I did, we raised money. We raised $12 million was our Series A. Yeah, speed is everything. In a world where anybody can build anything, it's all about speed right now. It's about speed, it's about execution, and it's about obsession over customers. Question yourself every day. Find what you got wrong, not what you got right. At the end of the day, you are the founder. You know better than the rest of the world. Just because somebody's done it somewhere else and they give you advice, that's not the advice you should be taking. Your gut and your intuition knows best.
That's product market fit.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
I called it the product market fit question.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
Product market fit. Product market fit.
The name of the show is Product Market Fit.
Do you think the Product Market Fit show has product market fit? Because if you do, then there's something you just have to do. You have to take out your phone. You have to leave the show 5 stars. It lets us reach more founders and it lets us get better guests. Thank you.
Well, Amanda, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. Stoked to be here.
I'm excited for this one. There's just so many things. AI is this wave is insane. Things are changing so fast, and you're right in the middle of it with OneMind. You just raised a $30 million Series A not too long ago, a few months ago. And you also, you're a multi-time founder. You started a company called 6sense, which has grown to the hundreds of millions in revenue. So we will talk about what you're doing today and where you see things going in AI and kind of where you're positioning yourself. But maybe let's start with 6sense. Tell me a little bit about what that company was and kind of why you started it back in the early 2010s.
I always just say 6sense was, I started 6sense to find buyers and OneMind to close them. And I always start my companies with a number, which is a nice fun fact, have to have something. And it had to be listed, if we're ever on the same list, OneMind had to be before 6sense, right? Because that's my baby now. 6sense was born out of my services business. I had a 16-year services consulting company. We were doing big data before big data was a thing. Now that's funny to actually look at big data. We called it big data in 2010, which is wild, right? We didn't know what data was back then. But I was working for companies like Cisco and Intel and HP. I was bringing together their CRM with their call center data, with their web analytics, making a bunch of executives feel good about themselves. I had a nice lifestyle business. It was like a $5 to $10 million run rate business. Never sought out to be a venture-backed CEO. But I built a product for Cisco inside of that services business. As I was doing all these analytics, I was like, I'm just making these executives feel good about themselves. I'm not actually changing the direction of the company or offering anything of insight.
Why do you say that? That it was just really for the execs?
Yeah, it was analytics. Right, if somebody gives a project to you, they want you to use the data to prove their thesis so that they can move forward with what they're trying to do.
Nothing objective, yeah.
They don't want you to tell them that what they're doing is wrong. It's prove that this campaign worked. Prove that if we do this outbound, this play with our sales motion or have these partnerships, that they're actually driving revenue and driving value. Not prove what's not working. So I wanted to do something more. I had this, I felt empty in some ways. I was like, they're paying me good money, but I'm not really changing the direction of their company. So that was the impetus of 6sense, where I had a thesis. Instead of looking back on data, could I take patterns of behavior of buyers? And when other companies come in and exhibit the same pattern, could I predict that they too are in market to buy? It was a 5-year project of a lot of experimentation. We talk about experimentation today, but holy shit, they threw millions of dollars at my services business to help them find companies that were in market. And on the 5th year of going at this, we were like, oh shit, we actually figured something out. We were able to predict with an 83% accuracy rate when an account was in market to buy. And at the time, we were predicting the size of the purchase. I'll never forget, one of the first predictions was the Church of Latter-day Saints. And we predicted that they would buy $5 million worth of networking and security from Cisco. And then we were right. And it was like, oh shit.
Wow.
They went from a $100,000 account to a $5 million account. And I got it right on the dollar amount, wildly close. I abandoned that, predicting the dollar amount for future customers because it wasn't repeatable and scalable. So that's when I thought, I did it for Intel, I did it for a few others, and it was working.
And this was existing customers that you were predicting upgrades to, or broader than that?
Net new. No, we were saying like some existing and some net new. It was basically like, who should we be going out to? Like, think about like ICP. Like, we are all very clear on how to come up with ICP today, but nobody knew how to do it.
It's the classic like signals and like who should we, right? Okay.
Right. Who should we target? And they didn't know who to target. And they were just going after like, okay, we're going to go after these companies because we sold to Bank of America. So we should go sell to Chase. Well, actually, Chase isn't in market. They don't have a need, right? Just because you sold to that company. That was, if you look back in the early 2000s, that's what we did in enterprise sales motions, right? So I was able to do it with a high degree of accuracy. And that's when I said, oh shit, I need to purpose build software to do this. And I need to make this scalable and repeatable. And that's when I went out and sought venture funding, went down Sand Hill Road, had 60 some VC meetings, got a lot. I mean, it's like 22 all partner meetings, which is crazy because we had market fit, like in the sense I have $5 to $6 million of business on this particular product. It was a $10 million business, but
Within the services business.
yeah, within my services. So I had real enterprise companies willing to pay, but what I didn't have was a good technical co-founder or a product. So it was very like opposite to what VCs were typically used to seeing.
No revenue, but everything else packaged. Yeah. Everything's nice and ready to go, but
Yeah. So it was very strange for the VCs and for me as well, because I kept getting to all partner meetings and not crossing the line. So like, wait, you don't have a strong enough technical co-founder. So that's when I actually had a VC who was kind enough to give me the truth and say, we're not going to invest because we don't believe in the hired CTO that I had brought to the table. And I was like, oh shit, okay. So he actually introduced me to what became my co-founders at 6sense. In fact, they were building Snowflake. And so I feel kind of bad for them. So I took them out of what would have been a Snowflake.
rough. You gave them a win, but they had a bigger win on their hands. Yeah, that's tough.
I know, right? So they joke with me all the time, like, we were fucking building Snowflake, Amanda, and you convinced us to come over and build. No shade on 6sense because I love what they're doing. Anyway, so brought 4 technical co-founders over, and like overnight we had multiple term sheets. And so I share that story because it's really important. Like as you think about, early stage founders and they're thinking about, what do I need to actually go raise that money? Every single box is important in that checkbox. You have to have all of the ingredients in order to move forward. And I thought I could just like skirt through it with like, oh, but we've got these great customers and we'll figure it out. And I didn't have that box checked. And so then once I did, we raised money. We raised $12 million was our Series A. We didn't do a seed round because I didn't need it.
That was your first funding, was it 12 million? Like when you're pitching them, you're pitching about the Series A.
Yeah, exactly.
And the product at that point, to be clear, was already, it wasn't just Cisco. It was a $5 million in revenue from a bunch of different like service customers.
Yeah, but we killed off that business. So we went to zero. So it was basically, they were paying that. It was a service. That was services revenue. So it wasn't ARR. It wasn't subscription revenue. Everything I built in my past life had to be rebuilt, had to be started from scratch. In fact, Cisco didn't move over for probably 18 months. Like they stayed using what I built them before, and they were maintaining it and managing it. And in fact, Intel didn't move over either for a very long time. So a lot of the customers we built it for just kept using this homegrown solution that I had built. But I was like, let me go purpose build this for, and then Dell became like our first biggest customer at 6sense. And I did something different than what most people do. Because of my services business, we started enterprise. And so we were going after the whales, and everyone looked at me, and a lot of VCs looked at me and was like, what the fuck? Like, that's not how you build a business. You start small and then go up. And I was like, no, I'm gonna start big, and then it's easy to pare it down. So if I get that right, I can go down here. To me, it just makes the most logical sense.
You also had credibility. I mean, you had worked with these customers. You knew how they bought. There was all this other stuff. It made a lot of sense given your situation.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know any other way. I knew the enterprise world. Same thing today. Like as I started OneMind, I think when I went out for funding, like some of the doors shut instantly when they're like, wait, what? You're starting here? Like you don't want to just start small and start with like mid-market, get some traction and then go up. And I was like, no, I want to go for it. HubSpot was one of our first customers, and they are a large 6-figure deal right now with multiple superhumans. The largest business social network is a customer. We've got big names and big enterprises that are like trusting us 18 months out of the gate. But for me, I think that's actually the easiest. Like start there. We get it. We'll take on the hard problems first. I'm not one to shy away from hard problems. I think hard problems are especially in today's world where anybody can build anything, that we've got to solve the hard stuff first and then come down.
I think it's also about, there's so much like kind of blanket advice that's just given, like, this is the way, you learn, like, this is the way you do things. Like in your case, it might have been, you start with mid-market and then you move up. That's just the way you do it. And it is the way you do it because it actually probably is good advice for like 90% of people. But your job as a founder is to figure out when is the things that people are saying on any, because that's one piece of advice and there's like 100 of them, which one actually doesn't apply to me. And in your case, that obviously didn't apply to you because, yeah, people do that because also they don't have the time, patience, or skill set, credibility, whatever it is, to go and knock on Dell's door and actually close it. You did. So it was a little bit different.
And yeah, close an enterprise deal is not trivial, right? So it's hard, but I also think sometimes founders take advice too seriously. Like I always look at even my VCs, like which I have a newfound relationship with my VCs at OneMind that I didn't necessarily have at 6sense. And it was on me. Like I actually didn't know how to leverage and use them and trust them in a way that I've learned in my second time around. But I think, I used to say something like, if somebody tells you something once, like, twice, okay, I'm going to listen. And then like 3 times, okay, maybe I really should pay attention, right? Like, I think that was the wrong way to think about it. I do think like now I have a sticky on my wall that says, what did I get wrong yesterday? So I'm in the mindset in this next round of my phase of my evolution is to like to look at things of the more I know, the more I don't know. And the more I can challenge myself every day, the better we're going to be versus, I'm an Enneagram 8, if you know anything about Enneagrams.
I don't, by the way. What is that?
It's basically in my DNA to always be right. Like I have to be right. So I have to remind myself to challenge myself to be wrong. And the more I could do that, I move to what they call your high side, which is like the better side of you. It was like better way of saying, it's probably a better way of saying it. But the low side is like always being right, fixated in like my way. And so when I'm actually my softest and when I actually am my best and I perform the best is when I'm actually finding ways to be wrong.
By the way, there's a lot of discussion. We'll go through the story, but just as a tangent, like there's a lot of discussion about like the bootstrap and the lifestyle versus like the venture back. Like I think that's like a forever kind of discussion. People saying this is better, that's better, whatever. In your case, you had a successful quote unquote lifestyle, services business, bootstrapped, whatever. It was doing many millions of revenue. And then you went off to the venture side, having done both. Obviously, it seems like you like the venture side because you stayed there, but maybe give me some insight into, the high, like the top of mind pros and cons, for you having done both of those things.
I never set out to be a venture-backed founder. I was loving the lifestyle business of being bootstrapped and doing my thing and having control and nobody telling me what to do. But when I realized it's kind of what market you're going into and what you're trying to build. And when I knew that I needed to build something that was bigger than a services company, I was trying to build software and I knew timing was everything and that we had to get out in front. I needed funding so that we could get out in front of anybody else who's going to do this and so that I could scale. And so I think it was just the nature of what we were building and what I was trying to do that made sense that I went to venture. I mean, I've never been so poor as when I worked at 6sense, right? Versus like my 10 years, 16 years at my services business. I was fine. Like I lived the lifestyle business. Like I didn't have to worry about anything. But yeah, in venture back, like it's not until you have an exit and less than 5% actually have some kind of meaningful exit in a venture backed world. So I think there's a false sense of hope that happens in this world and most people don't hit it. I was fortunate to have a positive exit. I took 5 years off and said I wasn't going to come back to work and I was done. But, that's not, there were many times when it wasn't going to happen. Like we were struggling and I think I got really lucky, in the end, made some hard decisions that paid off, but we were on the brink of failure every other day.
That is one of the, it's a massive difference, right? Like services, if you're doing many millions, unless you're mismanaging it, you're probably doing very well, right? Like you're supposed to do it on, positive cash flow and solid net margins and all that stuff. But you could be doing many millions in revenue in venture land. And you personally are, and fortunately today, there's many more like secondaries and just like a richer market for that. So the reality is, if you get to a Series B or C, you can have like somewhat of it, depending on, how hot you are, like somewhat of an exit event, which wasn't always the case. But still, you could be doing 5 million, 10 million, 15, 20 million ARR, and it doesn't show. Like for you personally, you're like, there's this weird disconnect.
I love the fact that people can take money off the table. We work hard. You've vested for a reason. Never know what the future's going to bring. Like even 6sense is having a tough time right now. At one point was valued at 5 billion. And those people, I took some off at that valuation as well. And there were people who looked at me like, why? We're going to go like to the, you never know what the world is going to bring. We didn't know that this AI wave was going to hit and what was going to happen to SaaS. And it's not a reflection of 6sense, it's a reflection of the market and the evolution of technology. And so I don't think any of us are smart enough that can see into like, have a glass ball and see into the future. And so if you like, I think it's important for everyone, like to take that time and I don't want to take everything off because I still want to be motivated to keep going. But I want to leave the door open for my employees at OneMind as well. Like when the time is right, that they also can do that if they put the hours and the time in, and it gives them a little bit more comfort. And I think that comfort doesn't make them less motivated. I actually think it just makes it easier to like, okay, more things are taken care of. I can take care of my family and now I can put more energy towards the company. And if you have somebody who has a good work ethic, it's not going to shift how they show up every day. I think that's what some VCs worry about. Like, oh, well, they're not going to be motivated for no, they still want that too. Like, even though I've taken a good bit off, I still want to go to the moon. Like, that's no fucking doubt. Like, I want to be one of the most successful women founders. I should just say founders. But yeah, like I still feel like I have a deep obligation for women to be successful. It weighs on me every day that I've been really afforded the blessing of doing this a second time. And I really do believe like the universe has given me this so that I can show women that they can do it too.
Love it. And yeah, back to your other point, I think there's actually more alignment because for the VC, you are diversified. Like you actually have a portfolio, which is why you're like, just go all the way, go all the way, go all the way. For the founder, if you get some exits off the table along the way, then it just makes that, taking more risk, dialing up the risk in order to be able to have that shot at making it bigger, just makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I've never worked harder in my life, like right now, ever.
So just going back, I want to talk about OneMind, but just going back to 6sense, maybe just one question, which is because it might tie into the stuff that how the world works today, but how did the world work back then? Like the signals that you were pulling and just how the product actually was able to tell you who was ready to buy. Broadly, how did that work?
Yeah, I mean, basically we were doing a lot of de-anonymization, right? So just even as simple as those people who are coming to your website and started to look at your product pages, and we tie that back by IP address and device ID and tie it back to an account and know, hey, they're there looking at you, or that they're doing third-party research and they're out there and they're, on Forrester and Gartner and all the marketplaces and looking at your competitors' products. That's a pretty good signal that you should probably be calling on that company right now. So it's a really obvious concept, but it was hard to do that de-anonymization, triangulate it back, find the buying committees, and then tie it back to the individuals as well. So it's not just the signal of the account, but you want to find the individuals within that account that you should be calling and who to prioritize, and then how to put that into motion for your sales team. So then how do we hand it to a large enterprise sales team to action off of this and make this part of, I remember in the early days, it was all about how do we get people into the OneMind product versus sending it into Salesforce or somewhere else.
Into the 6sense or OneMind?
At 6sense. I had a deep belief if we sent the 6sense signals into Salesforce, we would be dead, right? We had to get people into the 6sense platform, using the 6sense platform and using that as a system of record and a place that they go every day, which was really hard to do back then, right? Like everyone wanted to be in those, put the data where we live, right? And so there's something easier about that. But when you bring them in and they start actually using your product, that's what's going to keep them sticky and that's what's going to keep them coming around and not churn off to my competitors. And we had 900 ankle biters at the time.
Is that ultimately what made things like, it sounds like you had pretty insane growth and then like as you mentioned, things have been, let's say, a little harder. Like, is it a competition story or is there something else? And I ask that because it's, I was just talking to a founder earlier about this, like you're never safe. There's always a new challenge. I mean, and you kind of naively think at the beginning, like if I just get to 1 million in revenue, like then I'll be good. If I just get to 10, I'll be good. If I get to 100, like I'm good, right? And like, you're never good. I'm wondering, in that light, like with 6sense, was it competition or was it something else?
Yeah, no, you're never good, but you always, as a founder, think that like, oh, fuck, okay, if I just get to this goalpost at this round, then we're going to be like smooth sailing. And it's never that.
Never.
What led to the slowdown is the way buyers are buying has completely shifted. So I think what worked in the early, 2010s and through 2025 is not working today. Buyers are demanding more instant answers, like with AI. Like they are not going to websites and doing research the way they were before. They expect immediate, instant answers and responses, and to have autonomy and have actions taken for them versus like, let me learn and then do the next thing. And so I think one of the challenges with the way that 6sense is built is that it's working based on past data and then saying, what should I do versus actually taking the action and doing the thing for the buyer. So I think that, the similar to like the shift from SaaS to AI, that is one of the key fundamental things that's going to challenge any incumbent SaaS company today. Systems of record moved to systems of engagement like 6sense, and now are moving to systems of agents and autonomy and doing the thing for me and taking over. And it's all centered around the human. So everything that Salesforce and all of the legacy SaaS providers are doing are building systems around a human. And I think that's what's fundamentally broken, is that we actually don't need the humans in the loop anymore. And all of the incremental change to the human are going to be challenged today.
So we'll get into that. Maybe the last question on 6sense is, why did you end up leaving?
Good question. We hit some growth challenges, and I knew that if I took myself out, we would get an influx of money and it would help us get to the next round. So the next phase of the company, I'll never forget the day I made the decision, and I called my independent board members and then told my executives and had to walk a lot of people around the block. Some tears on all sides, like this is what we're going to do. But it was the best thing for the company. Honestly, I was a first-time founder. I didn't know how to build that go-to-market muscle and that engine. And I brought somebody in who did. And, Jason came in and he did great.
And that was in 2020?
I left in early 2020.
And so then you start OneMind 2023, 2024?
End of 2023. Yep. January 2024 was basically when we kind of kicked off.
What brings you back into startup land?
I had 2 kids. And honestly, being a single mom, stay-at-home mom was the hardest job I've ever had. So I said I would outsource that and come back to work. I say that in jest, but it's kind of true. Hats off to all the single parents, moms and dads, because it's literally the hardest job. Having kids screaming, and I was like, all right, I need to go do something. And I played a lot of golf. I played enough golf. I was like, shot the best round of my life, and I was like, put my golf clubs down. And honestly, it's this wave of AI, right? I had to be a part of it. I couldn't sit this one out. I didn't know this was coming at the time that I stepped aside. And this is the most exciting time I think we're going to see in our lifetimes. And I had an idea of building these superhumans with AI that would replace salespeople. And I had to take another swing. And I think that time off gave me perspective and made me more fired up than I've ever been.
You love this show. You don't want to miss the next episode. Why would you? So hit that follow button. Trust me, it's in your own best interest.
I asked that because I had a kind of an inkling that maybe it had to do the AI thing had to play a role in all this. And there's 2 broad, really high level, 2 ways to come up with an idea. One of them is it just kind of happens, right? And that a lot of the common narratives about Facebook or Shopify is that it's just oh, what do you mean? I was just playing around, doing things, and then all of a sudden I did this, and people loved it, and I did more of it, and all of a sudden it's a $1 trillion company. When you start it, and it's great, but it's hard. It's for a founder who's either starting something or just started something. You can't really do anything with that. I mean, it's hard to act on that. And then there are companies, successful companies, that start a bit more top down. Hey, there's this inflection, there's this change, and therefore, blah, 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 right? So that's my question to you is, you're seeing things happen in AI as we all are. How do you go from that high level to the idea for OneMind?
Yeah, honestly, so the idea the company came to me. So there was a lab company that had built, it was more of a face technology, and they had a little bit of a brain. And they had cloned Deepak Chopra and Barack Obama. And they said, we want a CEO for this. Will you come run this? And I was like, no, I'm not in the business of cloning. This isn't for me. And then over the weekend, I started to think about it. And I was like, wait, with the brain of what AI can do, if we could actually replicate what salespeople do across the life cycle of the buying process, there's something here. And so I kind of went back to the technical team and I was like, can we do all these things? Can we eventually, not today, but eventually complete these tasks and do these things? And do you think AI is going to catch up to X, Y, and Z where we can actually give a live demo and do the...
And this was 2023?
This was 2023.
Okay, so a year after ChatGPT.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe like 8 or 9 months after. And I was just like, oh, wait, shit. Like, okay. And it needed to, like, the latency was like off. And there were a lot, like when we first launched the product, it would respond every 10 seconds, because it had huge context windows.
That's why I'm asking, just because things have changed so fast. The things you're saying like were big back then are now like, yeah, of course. I'm just just trying to contextualize it.
But back then it was like, can it read the screen? Can it give a live demo? Can it like do the tool calls and look into systems in real time and know everything about that buyer? I was really questioning, are we going to get there in a short enough time that if I start building this, that we can start going to that, being able to bring those features in. And I got technical confidence that we were going to get there. And so that's when I said, okay, I can do this. So we spun that out of the lab, basically took all the IP into OneMind, created OneMind. So that happened. It was, maybe like a 4 or 5 month process of like spinning all of it out and saying, okay, we're going to do this, brought the team over. We've since moved on to, I have a new CTO and a new team that's more AI forward and super excited about. But yeah, I just had this thesis that like the sales process is broken and humans really are terrible in go to market. Like if you think about what humans are doing, we have time limitations, capacity limitations, recall limitations, and they hallucinate all the time to get the deal done. And we take buyers through this process of look at my website, and then now I'm going to try to sell you something. And you go to a SDR, and then he passes you off to an AE, and then they pass you off to a sales engineer, and then you get a solutions engineer. And then when you buy, you get a CSM. But what if I could collapse that all together to have one seamless experience? And the net result would be helping companies with efficiency because you don't need as much headcount, but also growing revenue and like really talking to our customers in a way that resonates with them. So, we're on our journey of building the context graph of fully understanding the buyer and like building multiple agents behind the scene that like all come into one so that you pull down the latency and you can bring the cost down and you can keep it highly accurate. But it's quite complex. Like at the end of the day, like all the things that we have to do to make this happen. So that was like the genesis of the company. And we've been on this journey now to not just be the AI SDR, but to take over the life cycle of the customer.
I was just going to ask that question, which is, how is this like, maybe, I mean, because I can see how if you're doing the whole thing end to end, obviously it's different than AI SDR, but why didn't you just start with an AI SDR? That was the kind of the hot thing 2 years ago. What was your view on those?
Most people with AI SDRs are doing it for outbound. And for me, outbound is a race to the bottom. Like it's really difficult.
I see.
And there's a lot of spam and then you get people who say no and then you have to warm up the emails, the servers, like so you don't get blocked. And if anybody's been hit by those outbound messages, like the amount of emails that I get, like I don't want to do something that's not good for buyers. And so for me, that was not a good experience. And so I wasn't going to get into the race of something that's not, may help, so you don't need as many people writing the outbound emails, but I don't want to be in that world.
So you're thinking more about the buyer than your customer or the seller?
100%. Every day, I think I tell our team to obsess over their buyers, not over them. Now, I hope my customers don't hate me for saying this, but I'm not looking at what they're trying to accomplish. I'm looking at what their buyers are trying to do. They're trying to learn. They're trying to self-educate. They want to know if this product works for them, solves the problems that they have, and they want to do it on their time and in their way. And if I can serve them, if you have a good product, the result is going to be exponential for you, our customer. And so our North Star is the buying experience, not actually driving revenue or creating efficiency gains.
And what does that look like? Like, is it just, it does, I mean, but at a high level, right? It makes sense that, that the buyer is the one that really matters here. And it's true. It's funny with these channels. It's like everybody knows. I was just talking about this to another founder, like Reddit, for example. Like I know everybody knows there's all these black hat methods that Reddit today. And if you want to create, whatever we call this outbound or inbound, but if you can spawn up all these bots and they can comment for you and then you'll rank up and all this stuff. And we all know in 3 to 6 months that ends and you got to do the new thing because it's actually not good for anybody, but you do it, right? An outbound email is the same thing. Everybody knows that channel is going to get to the point where it just effectively breaks and it's just because you're going to stop. Either they're not going to stop it and you're going to stop listening, or they're going to stop it and those things are going to work. But there's no way that you somehow, every single company could outbound AI email you. That's going to just not work out long term. But you all keep playing that game. But it's obviously not good for the buyer. So I think that makes a lot of sense. But what is the vision, especially at the outset, that you see? Is it just when I click on a website or a product, I'm just talking to AI all the time? Or where do you think, like, what was the end state that you were trying to drive to?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that we have an account-based context graph behind the scenes that knows when you come to the website, knows everything about you, everything about all the other buyers in your committee and everyone else in your organization who has influence over this purchase, can see where you last left off, can see your objections, give you the pitch, give you the demo, answer your questions, and take you through the process. Now, the end goal might be to book a meeting with an AE right now, because we're not at the point where we're replacing AEs yet. At some point, we will. Definitely the commercial AEs will be next. The strategic ones, the lifeline is a little bit longer. Then it passes off and it books a meeting if it's a sales-led motion. If it's a PLG-led motion, we have companies like Monday.com that are using our superhuman to onboard your customers. You just signed up. Let me get you using this product. Let me show you how to use it. Let me show you on the screen. Let me walk you through a demo. Let me show you other customers that are using this that are successful. So let's move that conversion from free to paid, from like whatever, I don't know what their numbers are, but I'm making this up. So like from 2% to 5%. If I can do that, the impact I'll have on your business is astronomical, right? And you have that 98% that are dropping off. What if we can turn the knob on that 98% to convert them? So the places that people are really seeing the most immediate value for something like a superhuman at OneMind is where there is no business model to put a human. So in those like down market segments, or think of a sales engineer. So we also join calls, so she can be on Zoom and on Teams, et cetera. So the superhuman joins. It's in passive mode, waiting to be called upon. So it's like a sales engineer, just like you would have a sales engineer that joins the call. Hey, I'm the AE, I'm in charge. When I tell you to talk or Slack you, or back channel on chat and says, okay, give the demo, be sure to answer X, Y, and Z. You can do the same thing to the superhuman. So she's just there, she's hanging out, she's waiting. And then you're like, hey, Mindy, can you answer that? Can you give the demo? Oh, are we SOC 2? Or how do our API keys work? She jumps in and answers the technical question, and then she goes back into passive mode. But in a lot of places, like in commercial segments, you would never put a solutions engineer or sales engineer on that call because the cost is way too high. But what if you could have it on your SDR calls? What if you could have it on your commercial calls? What if you have that level of technical depth and resource that you could never have before? So our goal is to help you supersede capacity limitations of humans. Let's start where there is no model for a human, and then earn the right to talk to your enterprise accounts. Let me earn the right to be the sales engineer on every deal versus just the down market deals.
So that makes sense to start off where the cost just doesn't justify having human, or where it's a PLG motion. And for most accounts, you just don't touch them. And now you have at least an AI that can go in and give them that personalized experience. Is the limitation to replacing, is it a technical limitation of today? It's just hey, it's actually not as good as a human? Or is it more just that, companies need to kind of see it before they believe it, and it actually is already there for most, I don't know, BDR or SDR or whatever. It's actually as good as they are today.
On the BDR SDR, it's as good today. On the sales engineer, the level of depth on technical expertise, the ability to give a custom demo, I believe that's all there. What's not there, and which is why I say the AE role, is navigating the relationship, knowing what the next steps are. She goes down multiple goals and she carries on a very natural conversation, but there's still the AGI problems that haven't been solved yet, and still the nuance of a deal, especially in a strategic deal where the superhuman isn't as good as a human. So I think it absolutely can play parts of the role of the sales engineer, but not the whole thing, right? So sales engineers are also going to be building the value models and the decks and things like that. So she's not doing those tasks yet. We're working on that, but that's not something she's doing quite yet. So there are some places she's way better than a human, and there are places where she's not there yet.
And then walk me through the positioning. You mentioned this SaaS versus AI battle, which obviously is going on. You also mentioned HubSpot as a customer. I mean, naturally, I would think, wouldn't HubSpot want to do this themselves? Wouldn't Salesforce want to do this themselves? When they want to kind of take over, they're talking about, we need to be an AI company, we need to do agents, blah, blah, blah. How do you fit relative to those systems of records that exist today and, everybody else that's already in the market? How do you think that plays out? Where do you position yourself against?
Yeah, I mean, Salesforce just bought our closest competitor right now. So, obviously they're seeing the writing on the wall that this is the way the direction is going. I I would be naive to think that HubSpot isn't building it. I don't know if they are, and they're going to want to offer this as well. I think it's going to be a game of catch up, right? So it's like turning a big ship, like an enterprise SaaS company like that, and getting to build an AI product, AI first in today's world, and keep up. Sure, in 6 months, HubSpot could build or somebody could build what we have, but hopefully we're 10 steps ahead. We're now giving the live demo. We're clicking around on the screen. We're actually creating the value model. Now I'm creating the content of like, here's your proposal, right? I'm updating it in the deal room. I'm joining the call. I'm solving for the AGI problems of if she's on a call, when does she speak? How does she know it's her turn? That's a really hard problem, right? Like, how do you know other than like the control, like a puppet master? We want her to just naturally know when to talk, right? So our goal is to just always stay a couple steps ahead, but absolutely, I think those companies are and should be trying to build towards something that we're building, and I think they'll have a version of it or eat up companies like us if we think we're for sale.
Got it. No, but it is the classic, like, the big companies are trying to get product and the startups are trying to get distribution, and it's just a question of like kind of who gets there first.
Yeah, I mean, speed is everything. In a world where anybody can build anything, it's all about speed right now. It's about speed, it's about execution, and it's about obsession over customers. And so, we have 211% NDR this year. And there's a reason for that. Like, we have been obsessed with our, and this is our first cohort of customers that are coming up for renewal, right? Like, we have a massive cohort that just all renewed and upsold, like most of them. And I'm wicked proud of that. In a world where there's so much experimentation, there's so much churn, I got very clear early on that we have to make every one of those customers successful and put as many humans and superhumans on that customer account to make sure that we get it over the line and they realize the value, the revenue that they can see as a result of having a superhuman, and making sure these superhumans are on brand, on messaging, and delivering revenue for them at the end of the day.
And by the way, like right now, like if you just play out your vision at some point, it's all AI on the sell side. Is it all AI on the buy side as well? Or is there a reason there's always a human that the AI is talking to?
No, I love that. Yeah, I actually think we have to, that's why we're like really rethinking our platform too, of like making sure we have this context graph for when it's agent to agent. It'll absolutely be on the buy side as well, right? So if you're thinking about buying something, you want to go out and say, these are my requirements. So you have an agent build the requirements based on my business and based on the things that I care about. And then it goes out to all of the vendors, looks at the pros and cons, looks at all the reviews, everything else, and said, this is what I recommend and why, and these are the trade-offs. And so I think that final mile will probably be a human for a while, like looking at the recommendations and deciding, because there's always going to be trade-offs. So the reason that no vendor choice is like, that's the choice, is because I'm weighing this versus that, and looking at the business and looking at the context of where you're trying to go as a company. What matters? Should we be more innovative to our customers and show them that we're willing to take this leap of faith, or should we just be really conservative and stick back and wait for everybody to figure it out? That's a top-down decision that an AI and agent can't figure out. So I absolutely think it's going to be agent to agent. I can't even imagine what the world's going to look like, but it's super fucking exciting.
It's like weird. You start thinking like, well, why are there even demos? Like, should all the demos just be like live on the internet, or are you going to have like an agent that's like coded to, it's a Dell agent, so actually they're worthy of a demo, but I don't want to show my platform to everybody. You know what I mean? Like, anyways, I'm not sure. you can go in like 9 different tangents.
The context, like knowing everything about that account and like when do we want to show something to what account, and like there'll be a set of deterministic rules too that humans for a while will have to like layer on top of the LLMs, everything that we're doing, because I don't think it's going to be fully agentic forever. I think there'll still be a level of like, okay, this is what my business is what I'm trying to accomplish, and like this is how I want to turn the dials. But that's an art. Like, it's a combination of art and science, and that's an art form, right? To do that and do that well. And that's just exciting to think about.
And then take me back to like 2024 when you decide that this is the thing you want to do, this version of OneMind. What is kind of that first move? Like, do you go, you're a successful founder. Do you go out and just like raise money? Do you go get like design partners? Do you start building? Like, how do you set things up?
I didn't do the design partner thing. I just went out and we raised a $10 million seed. And I had a clunky ass gamified face that broke every 15 seconds, that could barely show a slide. Like, hey, I think like this is where it's gonna go. It was awful. Like, and I love to say today, like our superhumans, this is the worst it's ever gonna be. Right? Even today, like there are times when there might be a second of latency when she's pulling up the demo. Like, it's not gonna be there like that in 6 months from now or even 3 months from now. Like this is, but back then when I was raising that seed round, it was a leap of faith. So thank you, Cassie Young from Primary Ventures, who took the leap of faith with us. We had others that were interested as well. And I think it's part of it, like luckily I'm being the second time founder, it was slightly easier, but not necessarily because there are so many good founders and good companies out there today. And, like I think about it, a lot of companies right now are doing point solutions where they're making today's process better. And I think if I were a VC and I was sitting in their shoes, it's really the disruptive companies that are like, if you had to start with a clean slate and wipe this category out, what would it look like? And there's so many like better note takers or better this. And it's like, that's just making incremental progress. But, it's a big bet and most big bets fail. So I think it was hard to go out and raise that money. But yeah, I absolutely wanted to raise money again. I want to have a big swing. I want to ring the bell. I've got goals.
And then what happens? So you raise that money. Do you like go heads down, build the first version of like the product to a certain level for like 6 months? Do you just go and get a customer to buy in, just like you got a VC to buy in? Like, how do you think about landing those first, like getting to the point where you land those first few customers?
I had conversations early on, but I knew they weren't going to go anywhere because the product wasn't ready. And it was like just priming the market. For me, it was more market research. Like, what did they want? So meanwhile, I had a team of engineers that were building. And then when we went to market, we hit 1 million pretty fast.
How fast?
Months.
And that was mainly enterprise deals?
Yeah, all enterprise deals.
How did you figure out because especially with these big visions, it's not that clear what the like first version should be. Like, where do you draw the line in the sand? Like, if your MVP's too small, it's kind of hard to tie to that big vision. And then maybe you're just like another, maybe not AISDR, but like kind of in that category. If you wait too long, then you're just building heads down for way too long and your chances of just being completely wrong are higher. So like, how did you know, okay, this is a full product. It's obviously not what we want it to be because still today it's not where you want to go, but it's sellable.
I mean, our bar was like current chatbots. Right. So like if you think about like being inbound on the website, the status quo was like a chatbot today. So we had to be exponentially better because I'm going to demand a 6-figure contract from our customers. Right. So I had to be better than a chatbot and exponentially better and on the and showing the path to being a human. So I think I had to show that this is possible, that we can do what a human could do if an SDR came on a call and also have the depth of a sales engineer. So it wasn't actually that hard to get to that. Once we had built like the core of what we were doing, I knew being able to like, even like as simple as like showing the slides, like we were the first one to say like, okay, a sales agent that is going to have a face and a brain and share slides and share like, and basically share case studies and videos. And now she's actually giving a live demo.
Okay, yeah, that was the question. Like the first iteration was just a chatbot and it would send you slides, or how did it work?
No, it was in the experience.
Okay.
So it would bring up decks. So it does that today, and it basically can bring up as thousands of slides in its brain based on where you go. You want the overview. Here's like, let me go through the pitch. Like I had actually my superhuman. It was one time when I did clone, which I'm not a really big fan of cloning. There are a few customers we clone for because they have a personal brand. But when I was out raising our Series A, I was like, okay, I'll clone myself. And I put my pitch deck into my superhuman, and it went out and raised the money from the VCs. So I let my superhuman go raise money from VCs. So it basically was out pitching. I think it gave like 60 some pitches, and we raised within 3 days. I got to term sheet.
Walk me through. Yeah, we gotta go in deeper on that. So you book the meetings, or it books the meetings. It takes the calls. Tell me all about that.
Yeah. So it didn't book. I mean, I would send it out. I was very mindful of who I was like giving the pitch deck to. And so I was like who I wanted to pitch and like who I wanted on my cap table. So I had like 50 or 60 VCs that I was like, okay, these are the tier ones that I want to go after. So I created my superhuman. We put the content in. I had the whole deck. It had 150 slides total. There are core like 20 that it would go through. But in case any question came up, it was ready. And it was ready with videos and customer testimonials, right? So it had all that content in. It was ready to give a demo of itself, which was kind of cool. And it would go down a linear path. Like it would say, hey, like Pablo, let's go through. Let's talk about, like, let me show you what one mind does. Can I give you the pitch? And then you'd be like, no, I just want to know what your margins are. I'm like, okay. So then she would jump to that slide. And then she would show like she would show our P&L. And then she would jump back into the flow. Be like, okay, now she left off on slide 2. So now she goes to slide 3. So she would like go through this linear progression of giving the pitch, but allow the VC to go in any direction that they wanted to go. And then I would get the transcript after. Actually, I had one VC, very famous VC, say some unfavorable things, but they forget. And this is what's funny about talking to a superhuman. People forget that you're being transcribed. Like I wasn't recording the video part of it, but I'm hearing what you're saying, so.
You also should just assume you're being transcribed 100% of the time at this point on any call. Like that should be your baseline assumption.
Even like the most forward AI investors like forget, like they literally, because you just get in the moment, right? You're in this moment and they're like, they let their guard down. With the really cool thing, which was also seeing in sales cycles with my superhuman, as I swear to God, the way that this VCs would open up to Amanda AI versus open up to me, they would be much more transparent. I could tell right away from a few turns of interactions whether they're going to invest or whether they'd be interested.
I see, right, on that side. That makes sense. Yeah, like maybe I'm hurting your feelings. Maybe you're going to be pissed at me. I mean, it's an AI.
Yeah. And then you just like you're like, just skip on, move on. Like they're rude to her. Like they were like, go to the next, like, I got it. Like move on. Okay, now show me customers. Show me a big customer. Show me somebody who's like renewed, whatever questions they were asking, right? And then she could just bob and weave and let them be in control. And that's actually one of the beauties of the superhuman in a sales cycle is that you're giving the control to the buyer, which is a better experience. Nobody wakes up in the morning and like, oh my God, I can't wait to talk to a salesperson. Said no one ever. Like no one wants to talk to a salesperson. But you want to learn and you have real needs. And the reason you're talking to a salesperson is you're trying to solve a real problem, but you want to do it in your time and your way, right? So it's this balance that the AI allows, like in that case, the investor to get the information they want in their way and go on whatever path they want. I have my path of like how I think I'm going to take you through the story arc. But if you want to go all over the place, fine. I'm going to ask, like the superhuman was pretty aggressive at the end. Like, hey, I didn't share like 3 of the most important things. Like, I know you're about to hang up, but can you just let me finish? So then she would get aggressive. Like I had her like trained to like be kind of clever in the process, be an asshole at the end. Like, okay, now I want to ask you, are you interested? Like, is this something that Amanda should follow up? And like, yeah, maybe no. And she'd be like, no, really, like, give it to me straight. And people give it to her straight. And one of the like worst things about VCs is they never tell you why they're not going to invest. And they would tell me why. And I would learn so much. And then I'm like, I'd tweak her for the next one. And so I had a cohort of like 10 investors that, they don't know who they are. I sent it to, and I never would have taken money from, but I just wanted to test it. It's like, how is this going to work? And then once it worked well, then I sent it to the 10 I really wanted to take money from.
And then you went, obviously at some point you went and like closed it.
But I didn't have to take the first call.
But you didn't do the first calls, exactly.
Yeah, then I would take that transcription and then I would go in and be like, so Neeraj is the one who invested in us and Neeraj and Brandon at Battery. And I'd like, hey, I saw you had this conversation. And then like, let's have the follow-up conversation. And then on the next call, instead of showing them the web version, I brought my superhuman on the call. So I was still there, but she was there to answer hard questions. If they got into, not that I couldn't answer them, but it was fun to be like, if they asked me about the model or something, I'd be like, hey, Amanda, can you grab that? And then I could multitask while she was answering the question. And I would do it kind of in a cheeky way, but to say like, she's better than I am. Like, I know my business really fucking well, and she knows it exponentially better. Like, she's got every detail of our financial model in her brain and ready to recall like that. And, I've got the top line and I can walk through it pretty well. But I might forget like exactly how much are we spending on the events or whatever like thing that they want to ask about. She doesn't miss a beat.
Well, I think when you can show the power of your product instead of talking about it, it makes, and there's some products you just can't do that because you're selling something to some industry that has nothing to do, with your product. You definitely could. And then doing it this way, I could see not just the fact that you're learning a lot, but yeah, it's just, people can see exactly, and the ones that really resonate with it will resonate a lot more than they would have with just a deck.
100%. And it's like, like Mike Maples talks about, like when you get no's, those are a blessing. Like, you're not building a category if everybody loves what you're building, it loves what you're doing. And so whenever I would get a no, I'd be like, thank you, because if everybody loves it, I'm building something incremental and it's too easy for people to grok. And so I actually want people to reject it. And I see that as a blessing.
Let's stop it there. I'll ask the last 3 questions we always end on. The first one is, when did you feel like you found true product market fit?
I think about 6 months going to market. When I saw HubSpot adding a 3rd and 4th superhuman, I was like, oh shit, this works. And it's working for them. And it was working for other smaller companies as well. And that's when I knew we had something.
Was there ever a time where you actually thought it wouldn't work and maybe like just this whole idea would fail?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think every founder thinks that. I think we'd be lying to ourselves if we don't. If you're not, unless you're building something like, oh, I'm a note taker. Well, that works. But how well is it going to take off? And is it going to be differentiated enough that people want to spend money on it? Yeah, I still think about like our ride along product is going live right now. We have, I think 10 to 15 customers signed up to like bring it onto calls as a sales engineer. And this has like a human component because the AE is going to be on the call. Prior, it was always just like this web experience and it was one-to-one. I have anxiety. I know it works. We bring it on our calls. Like she's fucking killing it. But will the world and humans accept it? I think that's still a question in my mind. I'm very confident they will. And I think they're going to see it as an ally and helping them get deals done faster. But it's still TBD.
And last question, what would be like your top piece of advice for an early stage founder that's looking for product market fit?
Question yourself every day. Like I go back to like saying like my questioning myself, like find what you got wrong, not what you got right. Question. And you know better, but at the end of the day, you are the founder, you know better than the rest of the world. And don't just take, just because somebody's done it somewhere else and they give you advice, that's not the advice you should be taking. Like your gut and your intuition knows best.
Amanda, thanks so much for jumping on the show. It's been awesome.
It's been so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Wow, what an episode. You're probably in awe. You're in absolute shock. You're like, that helped me so much. So guess what? Now it's your turn to help someone else. Share the episode in the WhatsApp group you have with founders. Share it on that Slack channel. Send it to your founder friends and help them out. Trust me, they will love you for it.